It was a stormy Friday night when Claire found herself alone at the house. Her parents had gone to a weekend getaway, leaving her to fend for herself. At first, she was excited. She was in her early 20s and had always enjoyed the rare moments when she had the place to herself. No one to tell her when to clean up or when to go to bed. The rain poured down in sheets, and the wind howled through the trees. The house creaked as if the storm itself was trying to enter. Claire had just finished her dinner and was about to curl up with a book when she noticed the strange feeling that had been lingering in the back of her mind since the morning. Something felt off. It wasn't the storm or the usual creaks of the old house. It was a sense of being watched, that nagging feeling that her eyes weren't the only ones roaming around. But no one else was supposed to be there. She was alone. She shrugged it off, choosing to distract herself with her book. But even as she read, the feeling intensified, gnawing at her. She glanced around the room nervously. The only light was from the fireplace, casting long shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps upstairs jolted her. Her heart pounded. She hadn't heard anyone come in, and the only people who had keys to the house were her parents. Her pulse quickened as she stood up, almost knocking over her book. The house was massive, an old Victorian with long hallways and creaky floors. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, as though whoever it was knew they were being heard. Claire froze, listening. The footsteps were faint but unmistakable. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She grabbed her phone from the coffee table and texted her mom. "Are you home yet?" She typed quickly, her hands shaking. No reply. Her heart raced as the footsteps seemed to move closer. She swallowed her fear, trying to calm herself. Maybe it was just the wind playing tricks on her. The house was old, and the storm had a way of making things sound strange. The footsteps stopped. Then she heard a soft knocking, not from the door, but from above her, coming from the ceiling. Her stomach dropped. Who was up there? Claire stood frozen for a moment, trying to decide what to do. The knocking became more persistent, more rhythmic. Knock, 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 knock. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest flashlight and headed for the stairs. The air felt colder as she ascended, each step creaking underfoot. The knocking was louder now, coming from the attic. Claire hesitated, then made her way to the attic door at the end of the hallway. Her hand was trembling as she reached for the knob, her flashlight casting eerie shadows across the walls. She turned the knob slowly, and the door creaked open, revealing the dark, musty attic. The knocking stopped abruptly. She felt a rush of air, as if the house itself exhaled. Inside the attic was a labyrinth of old furniture, boxes, and forgotten memories. The flashlight's beam flickered, casting long, jagged shadows across the room. Claire stepped inside, her pulse hammering in her chest. Then, she heard it. A low whisper.
Claire.
She whipped around, but no one was there. The room felt colder still, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. She backed away toward the stairs, her heart thudding in her chest. Suddenly, the flashlight went out, plunging her into darkness. A scream caught in her throat. She fumbled for the flashlight, her fingers brushing the cold wooden floor. The whisper came again, louder this time.
Claire.
And then, a loud bang. The attic door slammed shut. Claire gasped, her breath caught in her throat. She stumbled backward and collided with something. No, someone. "Who's there?" she yelled, her voice trembling. But the only response was the sound of slow, deliberate breathing in the dark. Panic flooded her senses. She scrambled toward the stairs, heart racing, but when she turned to run, she saw something that stopped her dead in her tracks. A figure, standing in the corner of the attic. It was a tall, thin man with hollow eyes. He didn't move, just stared at her. Claire's stomach twisted, and she ran. Down the stairs, out of the attic, through the hallway, and straight for the front door. Her hands were slick with sweat as she fumbled with the lock, desperate to escape. But then, just as her hand touched the doorknob, it turned on its own. The door opened slowly, revealing a figure standing outside. Her mom. Claire. Her mother's voice sounded distant, as if it were coming from a long tunnel. Relief washed over Claire for a split second before her mother stepped inside. Her clothes were soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face. "What's going on? Why are you acting like that?" her mother asked, confused. Claire's mind was racing. Had she been imagining things? Was she just terrified of being alone in the house during the storm? But then she saw it. The look in her mother's eyes. They weren't right. They were empty, hollow. The figure at the door wasn't her mother. It was the same man she had seen in the attic. Claire tried to scream, but her voice was gone. Her feet wouldn't move. She could only watch in horror as the man, the figure that wasn't her mother, stepped closer. She could hear his slow, deliberate breathing, feel his cold presence as he neared. Before she could react, the door slammed shut behind her. The last thing Claire heard was the man whispering her name.
You shouldn't have opened the door, Claire.
The next morning, her parents returned, bewildered to find the house in disarray and Claire nowhere to be found. Her phone had been left on the kitchen table, its screen cracked. As the days passed and the police searched, the mystery only deepened. No trace of Claire was found. But one officer, while combing through the attic, found something chilling. A note written in shaky handwriting. "Don't let them in." And to this day, no one knows what really happened to Claire. But some say, on stormy nights, you can still hear her voice, whispering, calling from somewhere within the silent house.
Thanks for watching.